Hi, my name is Nicole Naditz, and today we're going to talk about a tool called Edji. And the reason we're talking about this tool today is because Edji is a great tool, or at least a tool with great potential for using authentic resources in the world languages classroom. And the nice thing about this tool, especially in our current situation, is that it works whether you are in the class face-to-face with your learners or whether learners are at home or other locations participating in asynchronous lessons. Now, one of their taglines for Edji is making reading engagement visible. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in relationship to this specific tool throughout this presentation. We want to focus first on what kinds of strategies are known to support literacy for all learners, including learners of world languages. There are many strategies that teachers can employ, but some of the most effective ones are activities that engage learners in predictions, connections, or in making connections with their own prior experiences, as well as connections to other lessons they've previously studied, other texts they've read, movies they've seen, and also other content areas. Another strong indicator or opportunity for fostering literacy are activities that actually engage students in the act of posing their own questions about the content in the texts they are interacting with. So one of the things that happens as we are giving our students authentic texts is that we don't really necessarily know what it is the students are thinking or engaging in while they work with those texts. So we want to know more, because by having that kind of information, we can really tailor the follow-up learning experiences for them. We can address needs and misunderstandings and so on. But unless we know what draws their attention when they read, what questions they have, what connections they're making, how they're refining their predictions, what they are understanding, where are they struggling, unless we know those things and have a way to find those things out, how will we know those things? It's difficult for us to make instructional pivots that are necessary. Edji is a tool that can help depending on the tasks that the teachers facilitate with Edji. So first of all, a little orientation to what the tool looks like. Essentially, teachers provide a text in the tool. It is a web-based tool. It works on computers, tablets, Chromebooks, and phones. And then when the learner opens up the text, they're able to either click and drag on a word or phrase, or press and hold if they're on a mobile device in order to select it. And as you can see here, some of these text items have already been selected. That's why they're highlighted. Once you select a text item, you can annotate it either by typing or by choosing an emoji or by using your microphone. What learners do with those texts, with those annotations, actually depends completely on the kinds of instructions that the teacher provides. So it's really important to remember that the magic isn't actually a tool like Edji itself. It never is the tool. Any magic, any powerful learning experiences, any impact that these tools are going to have is totally based on the learning experiences that teachers design precisely and strategically using these tools. So how students annotate, what they type in this box, what they record on their microphone, or what emojis they choose, and even whether you as an instructor choose to enable all three of those options or only some of those options, all of that is kind of dependent on what it is that you as the instructor are trying to get out of this process and the use of this tool. What's also nice to know about Edji is you can actually do the same process with an image. So you can take authentic images, including infographics, paintings, and more, and students can click anywhere on the image, and that will also open up the same annotation screen you saw here where they can type if you gave them the option to do that, or they can use their microphone to record an audio annotation, or they can put in an emoji. And what you're seeing here off to the left are all of the people who have commented so far on something in that general row of the image. If you click on a specific annotation, it will take you to that person's comment so that you can see it. Students can also answer questions that are added by the teacher throughout the document. And here too, the teacher has the option to choose the ways in which the students will be able to respond. Now, as you'll see in a moment, it is actually possible for students to see each other's annotations and even reply to them so that they do threaded annotations and continue talking about the content of this document in deeper and deeper ways. When you do a question, only the teacher sees that. So the responses there are one way and there's no reply to that. It's simply a chance for the students to process the text in a different way and share their thinking with you as the educator. So we're going to take a look at a quick demo, and I'm not able to do a totally live demo of all aspects because I'm signed in as a teacher right now, but this is my Edji Dashboard. It's separated into 3 columns. They don't have lines, but basically you have the section on the left, which actually has all your recently created work, as well as help and support directly from Edji. This area in the middle are readings I have already created that are ready to assign. They have a group ID. You can assign any reading to as many groups as you want. And then on the right-hand side are drafts of readings that I have not yet assigned to any group. You'll notice the groups simply have a code, and I title the group however I want. So group 1, for example. And when you open a reading, the first time you open it, well, I recommend that the first time you open a reading or your students open it, you have something called heat vision turned off so that the learners are only seeing their own comments. But what you're about to see now is what it looks like after learners have already commented and annotated. And you'll see that heat vision is turned on. And this is part of how they make reading engagement visible. The darker the annotation or the darker the highlight, that's the more people who have selected those exact same words or phrases that they wanted to comment on. And if I open up any one of those comments, if I open up any one of those, I can see that they have chosen to quote a section and then use emojis. In addition, if I just hover over it, I can get a quick glimpse of what they did, unless they did an audio recording, because then I'd have to click on it to open it up. I can also tell as the instructor by looking underneath each bubble, the numbers, there's a very small set of numbers here, and those numbers actually indicate that there are replies on that comment. So if I go here, there's a reply, and I can open up that reply to see what it says. Okay. So in addition, I did put an image in this document, so people have commented on the image. And I'm just hovering over, and every time I do, it's a little difficult on your screen to see, but there's actually the dot on the image itself actually kind of highlights to show me where the person marked the image in order to make their comment. Now, the other nice thing as the teacher that I can do is I can go to students, and I can look through my students, and I get a little glimpse of how many kinds of like comments and things that they have done. So I can view their highlights or their comments. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. I now have all of this student's comments in one place, if that's easier for me in terms of tracking what people have done. Okay. So that's one aspect of it, kind of from the teacher end. And what I do to turn off the heat vision, although again, because this is my text, it's never off for me. But over on the left, I have my teacher pane. I'm going to turn off the heat vision. And what that does is that once a student opens the text, I'm going to try to select it and open it. That will allow the text to appear in heat vision, without the heat vision. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to an incognito tab so that hopefully it doesn't think I'm signed in, so that you can see what the text looks like when the heat vision is off. So it says, for now I'm going to enter as a guest because I don't want to, there we go, guest it is. And as you can see, From the student perspective, there's nothing here, although it does recognize me and it noted that here's my comment. That's the only one visible, is the comment I've already made. Any comments I make, and here are my questions to answer, and so on. So I am not seeing anybody else's comments but mine. I have a chance to go through the reading on my own, do my own thinking and processing and questioning and connecting and so on before I am provided with all of the other thinking and other questions and other connections that have been made by my peers. And so what I recommend is that teachers actually give it to learners first this way with the heat vision off, so that learners can go through and have a moment to think on their own. So as you can see, I've highlighted some text. I'm going to hit new. What strategies helped achieve this? Okay, and I'm going to hit save. And now I have a new comment here. Okay, and I've even got a little kudos from Edji. Hey, you made your first comment. Well done. Right, now you can see that I can also add a recording to that comment. I'm going to press the microphone. I'm going to allow it. I am really curious to know how we actually did manage to cut those poverty rates, but I can tell already that there is still so much more work to be done. And given whatever steps have already been taken, I wonder what more we can do. I wouldn't necessarily post that comment normally, but we're going to just go with that. So now you can see that I have a recording here that is also added to my text post. Now, this is because I, as the teacher, when I created this, I enabled the recording and I enabled the use of text and I enabled the use of emojis as things that students can use in order to share their thinking and their questions and their connections on a text that the teacher has shared with them. So I am done with that one now. And you can see that every time I click on something, it offers me a new opportunity to add more comments. So I'm going to just close that out so it's not such a big bubble. But there's my little bubble, and there are my 2 comments. Now, watch what happens if I go back. When a student sees the text for the first time, I recommend, as I said, that heat vision be turned off, because what they will just see is plain white text, whatever the image is. They won't see all these dots. They won't see the highlights from all the other students. They won't be distracted by highlights happening at the same time that they are working, and they'll be able to concentrate on the text on their own. Once the students have had a first opportunity to look through the text, that's when I recommend you go through the comments, maybe take a look at any that need to be moderated. That gives us an opportunity to have a digital citizenship discussion with some of our learners who are struggling to make appropriate choices in online dynamic digital spaces. But once it's ready to go and all the students' comments are there and ready for other peers to look at and respond to, you actually come back to the same reading. You turn the heat vision back on using your menu in the left, and then you give the reading back to your students with a new set of instructions for how you would like them to find and process and respond to their peers' comments, so that now the students are having a second opportunity to go through the same text, and that should lead to some deeper understandings. That should lead to even some better, more nuanced understandings as they continue to dive into the topic again. And so one of the strong points of a tool like this is it allows for both individual use of technology tools, but also what's called co-use, that they're actually working with each other and using tools together, even if they're apart. So in this case, there is this collaborative feature where they can have these conversations, like this one has 2 comments on it. They can have these conversations about the text in meaningful ways. And that can help break down that sense of a student being by themselves on a computer all the time learning. If we're doing these distance learning scenarios, we really want to also build community. A tool like this also is really nice because depending on your instructions and how you're having them process the reading, it can also provide practice not only for the interpretive mode of communication, but also the presentational mode, if they aren't really replying to each other, but just kind of making their comments. And it does even touch on interpersonal, particularly if you have your students work this tool the way they work most social media tools, meaning that they don't work hard to refine and perfect and kind of edit and finalize their posts, but they treat it more like social media, where they just write what first comes to their mind, however it comes out, and they hit send, or they record themselves and then they just put it out there, and another learner can respond to that in the same way. So it mirrors a bit of what we know about interpersonal communication, particularly in social media settings, where we don't always prepare in advance exactly how we're going to engage in our next text conversation with our friend. We just respond when a text comes in. We don't even necessarily proofread our responses. We just send them. And it is what it is. And if there's a misunderstanding, because that is part of the nature of interpersonal communication, we're going to negotiate meaning after that to make sure we clarify whatever that misunderstanding was. So this tool has a lot of potential. And what I'd like to go back to now is showing you in the slide deck where it is that you can see some resources. We already talked about the heat vision, but you have a slide image here to help remind you of what that meant. And we're going to move into the teacher dashboard a little bit and what it looks like to create such a reading. So first, before we do that, I'd like you to just take a moment and kind of think about, what do you already particularly like about this tool as it relates to how your students might use it? What challenges do you anticipate in using this tool? And how do you think you might use a tool like this with your students? So I invite you to pause the video here and take a moment to kind of have that reflection for yourself before continuing the video to look at the teacher interface. So one thing to know about Edji is that it is a freemium tool. You start for free and then you pay for more features. And in particular, you pay to have more different readings available. I have provided the information and links to register in the slide deck. And essentially what you do is you prepare in advance the readings or images that you want your students to annotate. You decide how you would like your learners to be able to annotate. You'll be able to see a heat map of which items are annotated the most. As you saw, the annotations can be threaded, meaning that you can allow the students to see each other's annotations and reply to them, and that you can add questions for your students to respond to. So you create your account at edji.it, and then make sure you select the text or images that you would like your learners to work with. Do note that you can either paste the text from a site or from some other source, or from a Google Doc, wherever you have it, but you can also download PDFs to your computer and then upload those directly into Edji as well. The same for images. And the nice thing about the PDFs is they've done a recent update to Edji that will ensure that your PDFs are actually available and interact with Edji as if they were normal text. So in the past, a PDF would go into Edji like an image and they could just make a dot on it. But now their tool actually it recognizes text, and learners can select individual words or phrases the way they do with the text you saw in my example. And then decide what questions or activities you will insert to foster that literacy development. Some of that will come from the questions you ask, but some of it will come from the instructions that you provide in order to clarify exactly what it is that you want your learners to do with the annotation tools as they progress through the document. For example, you might have them use the emoji features and instruct them to use specific emojis to indicate or highlight a new word that they don't understand, but that they feel like is critical. And then they might use a different emoji annotation to highlight a word that is new, but that they feel like they actually understood based on everything around it and the context, or because it's cognate. Those are two great ways to use the emoji commenting feature in a tool like this. Then your instructions might also instruct the learners to pose questions or to make at least one connection to something they've already learned or experienced themselves, or to make a prediction at a certain point about what they think will happen next. So you are going to provide those instructions that actually make the tool have the potential and meet the potential that it actually has to foster literacy development. As I mentioned earlier, your dashboard has these three columns. Your help is on the left. The readings you've already assigned to groups are in the middle, and then creating new readings as well as viewing any drafts you have occurs on the right-hand side. Once you've said that you wish to create a new reading, it opens up a screen to kind of guide you through the process. So you'll start by giving it a title and making it either public or private. If you make it public, it will actually share the reading in a database that you as teachers can look through to find readings you'd like to use in your own account. You choose the grade levels, the subject area, and then as you can see at the bottom, it says reading content. So I'm going to go to my next slide, and that's actually just a continuation of this screen. So when you get to the reading content, you can paste text, and then you have this little icon menu on the left to insert an image anywhere within the text you would like, to insert a PDF anywhere you'd like, or to add a question. When you need to insert an image, it does have to be from the hard drive of your computer. It does not insert from a web link. So you need to download images to your computer, and then you can upload them in the same way that you browse to attach something to an email. Same for a PDF. It does have to be downloaded to your computer so that you can search for it and upload it as if you were doing an attachment to an email. When you decide you want to ask a question, you'll just put your cursor anywhere in the document where you want that question to appear, and then you'll choose that little question icon in the menu on the left. And once you do that, remember to choose which response options you will allow for this question. Anything with the green frame around it means it is allowed. Just click it to make it disallowed or unallowed. Once you've finished preparing the reading for your learners, that's when you'll create and share it with what they call your first group. So you'll give your group a name, and then you'll put the instructions here, and those instructions will appear above the reading when the learners see it. This is also where you decide how your learners may comment and whether or not they can reply to each other. Remember that if you turn heat vision off, at first, they won't be able to reply to each other, but you need to have it comment replies turned on here in order for your learners to have that second opportunity to go through the document again and not only see their peers' comments, but reply to them. So it is in this last step where you decide how your learners can comment and whether or not they can reply to each other's comments once the heat vision is turned on. You don't need to worry about custom codes, but if you do pay for the upgraded account, you can give each reading a custom code, and then they say create group. So notice this isn't going to necessarily post in the way we might be used to, such as directly to Google Classroom with a different one created for each class. So you can reuse the same group multiple times if you don't mind learners seeing the comments left by previous learners, or you can assign the same reading to a different group of students by just giving it a new group name. Once you hit create group, the sharing link, which is highlighted here in blue, and the code appear. So if you're in a classroom with learners and you've already pushed out the link to edji.it to them, they could just type in the code. Or you could put this link in Google Classroom or in your other platforms that you are using to communicate the learning activities with your learners. Once the reading is open and students are working in it, your teacher tools are on the left. This is where you get to see your students and click on a student to see all of their comments. This is how you turn the heat vision on and off. This is just the comment feed. It kind of pops it out from the left, almost like a social media feed. And reading recap is actually a hero feature that gives you a reading analysis screen for every single student. I'll show you that in a little bit. And then at the top right, you have again the code as well as your profile icon, and again, an opportunity to work in your feed. In order to open and view the student work, you go back to your dashboard and you actually just click on that code again to open up the reading, because that's how you see your student work, is to open the reading for that group of students. This is an example of the reading recap. It gives you how many minutes the students spent reading, how many comments they made, and what types of comments they made. In addition, for each of these first two, it will actually give you the average. So Karen spent 50 minutes reading, but the average is 61. Karen made 3 comments, but the average is 2. But interestingly, her interactions by type are all emojis so far. But you'll see, if you work with a student who's done more robust work in there, you'll start to see a number of how many text, how many audio, how many times did they reply to someone else. This again is in the hero mode or paid licensed mode only. So I do have a screen here that compares Edji Free and Edji Hero. Note that you only can have 2 documents in the free account. You can assign those 2 documents to as many groups as you want, but you can only have 2. Otherwise, you have almost all of the features that Hero has, except that, again, Hero has unlimited readings, and it has those student analysis tools with the reading recap. So think about now what you would create with Edji, as well as what your next steps are going forward and how you might really leverage a tool like this meaningfully.